Good evening and welcome to the Star Chamber Show live podcast. It is a great Wednesday evening here in Lexington, Kentucky, where I, Stephen Zimmer, am broadcasting from. And we've got a great show coming up for you tonight. Absolutely fantastic guest making a Star Chamber Show debut. And that will be coming up very shortly after our first segment. But I do want to say right off the top of the show, you definitely got to catch the Vamp Chat with Dan and Eva show from tonight. It was fantastic. They had J.R. Ward, a special guest, New York Times bestselling author, talking about the new TV series, all kinds of stuff. It was a great show. And yes, that's, of course, great podcast that we love and here on the Podbean Network. And, of course, it's Dan Klefstad and Eva Vertrees, yes, as the co-hosts on that show. And coincidentally, Vamp Chat with Dan and Eva, and I think that is Eva, was first in tonight on the chat room. Chat room is open, running, so come on in and take a seat or have your favorite beverage, relax, and we definitely take comments and questions and all that kinds of good stuff from the chat room. And yes, I see Dan Klefstad's in there, of course, DL Hearn, Dwan. Yes, the one and only Sacco and the Moon podcast. Yes, the man himself is in there. And yes, it looks like we got an active group building up there. And, of course, joining me in just a couple minutes, running just a little behind. You know, that's her trademark, and that would be the vivacious, the loquacious, and the audacious Holly Phillippe. But never fear, we'll get you up to speed. Here in the first segment. And hello to Amanda, who just came in the chat room. I see Amanda just came in, giving a few shout outs to some of our early folks checking in here. But as we are affiliated with the Imaginarium Convention, we always want to keep you up to date on all the latest updates with the convention. Definitely follow the convention on Blue Sky, on X, on Facebook and Instagram. Give us follows all there. And, of course, on TikTok as well. We do have a TikTok, Star Chamber show on all the previous, but also follow the Imaginarium Convention on TikTok as well, because we also cover all the shows on there. We don't have an independent Star Chamber show channel on TikTok just yet, but we do on Blue Sky, on X, Instagram, and Facebook. So, yeah, check all those out. And but I'll get underway here with the updates, and then we'll get you the folks that brought you tonight's show. And hopefully Holly will be on here in just a couple minutes, and then we'll get on to the guest segment. And let me tell you, it's definitely going to be a good one. So since last week, we did announce a couple new spotlighted guests and 4 new panelists. So joining us in 2026 at Imaginarium is immersive arts producer and actor Robert Thompson. Robert is a phenomenal talent based out of the Louisville area. A very accomplished stage actor, has acted in film as well. Has lots of different creative projects going on, and just a great talent. Excited to have him joining us at Imaginarium next summer. Also joining us as a spotlighted guest, returning, is Imagination Hall of Fame member Lee Pennington. Yes, Lee Pennington, 3 times Pulitzer Prize nominee and Kentucky Poet Laureate, lifetime appointment there, award-winning author, poet, filmmaker, and playwright. And we are one of the only conventions that he gives workshops at. Just saying. But he gives a workshop at every Imaginarium. And we are, to my knowledge, the only place he has been giving workshops at. So you definitely don't want to miss it. Chance to get an amazing poetry workshop from, one of the best in the biz. And coming in as panelists, returning, is author and editor Erica R. Raymer. And also returning is author, editor, artist, journalist, book blogger, and poet Jen Selinsky. Love to see Jen and Erica. Always. They are just absolutely fantastic. Great to have them back. And then joining us for the very first time at Imaginarium is author and artist Heather M. Floyd, who was recently a guest on the show. Check that episode out in our archive. Heather's got an absolutely fabulous new book. The Gravity of Grief and Joy, Birth Mother's Journey, great memoir that's just come out recently, and we did a full show, and check that out just a few episodes back. And then we also have podcaster and filmmaker J.D. Curry going to be joining us for the very first time. And then we had a thank you in order. As we always say, definitely If you run a convention, you know what I'm talking about. These make all the difference in the world when you get sponsors of any level. And so our individual sponsors, which we call our individual patrons, are very, very important to us. And Mick Williams, award-winning author Mick Williams, I should say, became our latest Imaginarium 2026 individual patron. Very excited to be able to share that, and definitely very, very thankful to Mick. And then last but not least, today we have started to announce our programming at Imaginarium, and I'm very excited about that. We'll be adding quite a lot. Today we just announced 2 panels and 2 workshops. By the time we're done, we'll have over 135 sessions and panels and workshops, and then we also have special events and other activities in our programming schedule. And but yes, this begins it all. So under panels, we have Has Ireland Become the New Transylvania? Evolving Vampire Origins. Moderators, Dan Klefstad and Eva Vertrice. Yes, it's going to be a really, really amazing panel. And then we also have Technical Writing, A Path to Becoming an Author and Speaker, moderated by D. Mark Haynes. And then we have under workshops, we added How to Be Creative When All I Want to Do Is Take a Nap, presented by Kimberly Hoffman. Definitely an Imaginarium favorite. The Hoffmans are awesome. Kimberly and her husband, Paul, are definitely guests that we love to have each year. And Kimberly is going to give this workshop that's going to help you take a breath and find peace as you rediscover your creativity for anyone feeling chronic exhaustion or those with disabilities or conditions that affect your energy level. So you definitely want to check that out. That's going to be a good workshop because I know quite a few creatives do have to fight that kind of battle. And then also, last but not least, on the announcements, Whispered Rituals and Sentimental Alchemy. Presenter is Jocelyn Waddle, and this is all about the Victorian art of floriography, the coded language of flowers. And yes, it was a big thing back in the Victorian era, and this is going to be a workshop all about that. So going to be a very good addition. So Holly
It
is
it's
here she is.
also good. It's also good for those that write um in that period,
Yeah.
Victorian period, or that write about herbs and flowers and poisonous things, and like, me, I would write all about the gothic, that all be poisonous plants, and belladonna and whatnot. The great things. But yes.
And yes, and it is Victorian era, and I made Holly's day because I
Yes.
used I used Grok today to take a selfie of
No, it was
myself,
terrible,
and
people.
and
No.
I got to show Holly what I would look like in 1890 with a bowler's hat
Oh
and
boy.
mutton chops.
No.
The bowler's hat and mutton
No.
chops. I look so
Mm-mm.
good. I mean, I
No.
would have been stunning in 1890 London
No.
with this
I
look.
literally
And
told
it
him I
was
wouldn't go
incredible.
anywhere with him looking like that. I would act like I didn't know who he was.
She
It
doesn't
was
want to admit
awful.
it
It's
fulfilled
not a look.
Holly's
Mm-mm.
favorite era, and
It
Holly's
is my favorite era.
hopefully her favorite guy coming together under one
Not that
banner there.
guy. No, not that guy. Mm-mm. No.
Yes, folks,
No.
bowler hat,
We'll
mutton
keep your
chops.
homeless man look
Oh,
opposed to that. No. Mm-mm.
I looked absolutely fantastic.
No, you did not. No, you did not. It
And I told
wasn't a good look then. It's not a good look now. And I love my Victorians, and I love the mustaches that get curled up, and people that, take good care of their mustache and oil it and all that. But the mutton chops, no. No, it never was a good look,
Nost.
never will be. And I will stick to it.
Michael Nost, we shared it with him, and he said he was
We
doing a
were going
tour.
back and forth.
He was doing a tour of some college students at the time that I sent the image to him, and he
Ah,
said it made him laugh, like, right in the middle of doing
he
a
said that we were
tour.
making him laugh because I was telling Steven, no, I'm not going anywhere with you looking like that. No, absolutely. And
I
so
thought it
Michael
looked
was
great.
laughing. We had Nasty laughing.
I had Victorian. I was in today's terms, they'd consider me lit or be fire. With my look in the Victorian era. Yes, bowler's hat, mutton chops. I look great.
No, no,
Holly just
no,
won't admit it. She won't admit it, but it's true.
no. You know what I told him? I said, "Don't ask me if you know damn well I'm going to give you my honest opinion. If you want an honest opinion, don't ask me." because I'll give it to you. You know, if you don't want an honest opinion, then yeah, don't ask me. If you
Right.
want an honest opinion, then okay, ask me. I'll give you my
Well,
honest.
well, I do have some serious good news. I did get to see a work in progress cover art update from Graham Ganson on my upcoming novel, Rise of the Voyagers, second in the Faraway Saga, and it's coming along fantastic. It is a great illustration, and it's not too much longer before that's done. And then on the other side of things, Olivia Pro Design is who I've worked with many times on my Raiden Ragnar kind of covers, is doing a new one for my Hongvi Shadow Walker tale. It's a novel, it's a standalone novel called As Above, So Below, and that cover art is underway. So I have a couple new books on the horizon. So I just thought I'd throw that little tidbit in. So, and no, my author photo probably won't be me in the mutton chops and bowler's hat.
No, it will not.
It probably won't.
No, it will not. We're not putting a 7-star publisher thing on there for you. No, I am not agreeing to that, and I'm half that stamp, so I do
Yeah.
not agree.
All right. Well, we'll give it careful consideration, Holly. I promise you.
No, no. Moon, do not encourage this. Do
Yes.
not encourage this.
Oh man, this is
No,
good.
Moon, no.
but but to the folks that brought you tonight's show are Sandy Lender, the genre blender, the one and only, and Per Bastet Publications. So tonight we'll go with Sandy first, give you a little info about her great booktube channel. Sandy Says Read on YouTube. Subscribe to it. Tell her you heard about it here. And here it is.
Star Chamber listeners already know that author Sandy Lender offers you a variety of spec fiction and epic fantasy adventures to help you escape reality. Did you know she also offers positive, quirky book discussions and reviews on her booktube channel, Sandy Says Read? Check out the Sandy Says Read channel on YouTube for over 600 book chats to entertain you. The channel includes the Indie Book Spotlight and the DIY for Creatives playlists, along with others to help you find videos and essays that pique your literary interests. Subscribe for free to the Sandy Says Read channel in time for the Monday night upload and join the community where our motto is, you can always find something good in a book.
Thank you, Sandy. Really appreciate your support. It's always a steadfast and supporter of the show for a long time. And also in the same vein is the wonderful folks at Per Bastet Publications, Teely Harris, Marion Allen, and Sarah Marion. Here's a little bit about them. Per Bastet Publications is a small press based in the Louisville metro area, specializing in speculative fiction and other outside-the-box books. 40 titles in print and ebook formats and a handful of audiobooks. Per Bastet offers a little bit of everything. Check out Frenemies in Space, Marion Allen's new science fiction short story collection featuring return character Smartmouth Connie Phelan. Or try Michael Dabney's latest David Blaze mystery, A Deadly Game, a prequel set in 1984 Philly. You can find these titles and more at perbastetpublications.com, at Amazon, or you could find the press in person at Kentucky and Indiana book fairs and conventions. Per Bastet Publications, where timeless tales unfold. So thank you to Literary Triumvirate again. Per Bastet Publications. And yes, Holly, we're on time. It's a miracle, but we're actually going to hit our guest
My
segment on time
God.
today.
All right, let's
Happens
go.
once in a while. So I think we're going to roll right into it. So
Let's go.
let's go. All right.
Let's go.
So tonight's guest is on the Star Chamber show for the very first time. And
Woo.
she is the author of Addio, Love Monster, which was the winner of the Best New Independent Press Fiction Award for 2022 from the Chicago Writers Association. And she also has a brand new novel coming, The Way Beauty Comes Apart. So she is a poet and an author, and she's also going to be a guest at Imaginarium 2026. It is my honor and pleasure to bring onto the show for the very first time, Christina Marrocco.
Yay.
Hello,
Yay!
Christina.
Okay, can you guys hear me yaying?
We
All
can.
right,
I
We
hear
can.
perfect,
you.
perfect. I'm here.
Welcome.
Thank
Good,
you.
great to speak with you. And wow, I mean, it's tough to know where to begin a conversation with you because you have so
Yeah.
many areas of interest that we have in common. So this is going to be a lot of fun tonight.
Fun.
And right on the cusp of a brand new novel, The Way Beauty Comes Apart. So Yeah, so give our audience maybe a little bit of overview about yourself, and then we'll just dive right into some of the topics.
Okay, perfect. So, actually, The Way Beauty Comes Apart is available. It's released in August, so it's available everywhere. And about myself, wow, I'm going to turn 59, so there's a lot, right? It goes back a long time now. Um, I'm an instructor of creative writing. I am a writer. I am a cattle dog owner. Um, and I'm just a person who's always been incredibly curious and interested in what's going on around me and what's going on within the people around me. So I think that has always fed into not just my writing, but sort of my distracted nature and everything that I'm paying interest to all the time. Um, what else do I want to tell you guys? Well, I'm an introvert who talks a lot. If you if you know any
Well,
of those.
yes, yes, we do. We know many. Yes.
So I do think once you start giving me some questions, I'm going to have a lot of answers for you. I do want to say thank you for inviting me. I'm super excited about, not just talking about the book, but talking to and with people who are really interested in books, in literature, and in the creative process. I think that is the thing that gives joy to my life and to the lives of a lot of the people around me. So I'm just glad to be here.
Well, we're
We're
glad to have you.
yes,
And
Thank
and
you.
and I did want to start since you were talking about you and your
Hmm.
life is your current memoir you're working on. Would you like to tell us a little bit about how this come about, why you felt the need to do this, what pushed you to do this, and yeah, inspiration.
Sure, absolutely. Um, so I'll start with the fact that I wrote this 20 years ago, but didn't complete it. It hasn't been revised. It hasn't been edited.
Well, you got
Um,
a lot to add.
and I have a lot to add. And in the meantime, I've become a better writer. So that means that we'll be
Yeah,
rewriting this.
there you go.
But yeah, and I think that happens, right? It even happens within one text. You start writing, and by the time you get to the
Yeah,
end, you've improved, and you go back and you have to look at your front end and say, "Oh, I've got to realign this entire front end." So when you look back after 20 years, I think it's more than that. Now, the reason for this is, or the concept behind it is that when I was about 5 years old, my dad had come back from Vietnam. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. We were really close with our cousins, aunts and uncles, grandparents. And my family bought 200 acres of fallow, rural, hilly land in the driftless zone of Wisconsin. And my dad was a firefighter, so he would have chunks of time off, chunks of time on, and we would live up there during the relatively good weather with no running water, no heat,
wow.
no contrivances of any kind, armed with the Yule Gibbons Stalking the Wild Asparagus book, foraging. Um, and I loved it. By the time I was 15, I hated it, but for most of my childhood, I absolutely loved it.
Well, it
And
was like a camping trip, a long
it was
extended camping trip.
long, extended, no real like entertainment of any sort. So we
Right.
made up stories and,
Nature.
yeah, exactly, all of that. But we also like lived in the dirt, playing with anthills and sharpening spears. And,
Yeah.
I think doing all of those things, also reforesting, because there was a reforestation project that we took part in. But I didn't understand when I first wrote it all the family mechanisms that were behind what was happening there.
Right.
How my dad's experience in Vietnam was playing out in his love of solitude and also kind of
Uh,
like a jungle-like experience, right?
yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
or need to repair. Um, how my immigrant ancestors who had really hungered for land and not been able to have it, how that was kind of epigenetically playing out in my family as well. And it's also hilarious and all kinds of, strange and wonderful 1970s-esque things happen. And so, I just think that 20 years ago, I was not old enough to write it yet,
Right.
if that makes
Yeah, you
sense, right?
did you hadn't been able to, peer through the looking glass, be
Hmm.
introspective like you are at this age.
Absolutely. I was too
Mhm.
precious and
Right.
too sentimental.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think that is what drops away. So that thing now, it's a big unwieldy kind of octopus of a manuscript, and I've got to wrestle it into shape or start over. Those are your two options. And also, I have to pass it by my cousins and my brother as well because they will figure prominently. So being truthful while also not getting sued. I think that's how you write memoir.
Well, that and if you get people outside of your mind, taking
Hmm.
a look at this, and they were there to experience this with you,
Hmm.
they will have
Hmm.
a different viewpoint on the
Absolutely.
details of what happened opposed to you.
Hmm.
And it
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's neat to get feedback on that. And then your memory may be like, oh, yeah, that's the way it happened. You actually,
Hmm.
forget something or you've left something out when they said, oh, but this and this happened. It coincided with this. And you're like, oh, that's right. Yeah, I didn't even
Hmm.
think about that. So, yeah,
Hmm.
that's really neat. But I did want to ask you because, yeah, I've put it on the back burner for many years, started years ago,
Hmm.
with a co-writer. I was getting some assistance because I felt too close to it, and it was going through some abuse that I have went through over my years and all this, and it was really hard for me to get it all brought together and be cohesive. So. My question is, how in a memoir was you able to timeline it? Because I know our brains, the way it works is, especially with my ADD brain, I jump
Hmm.
from here to this to this to this. I mean, where do you start? Where do you do, so
So
did you do a
yeah,
linear thing or did you jump
uh,
around?
I would call it half linear and half jumping around.
Okay.
So I don't like to commit to like a
Yep.
plan, right?
Right.
I like to see what comes and then wrestle that down. So what I would say and what worked for me was that I looked at kind of major hotspot memories or events that happened within the time frame and the space, the setting that I was looking at, right? And
Okay.
then I almost wrote the chapters more as essays about that package of time and events, but they're all linked because they make up the memoir. But
Right.
rather than the chapters being very, very linear, where there's not a moment left out, they're like beads on a string. And I think what that does for a writer too is it takes some of the pressure off and it allows us to encapsulate various moments, but also different levels of joy or pain or confusion. We can keep it sort of discreet. And, there's that old saying, you're either a pantser or a plotter. I'm a
Right.
pantser. It sounds like you're a pantser as well.
Yes.
And
Oh, yes.
I feel like we pantsers have to impose some sort of a structure that we can put our work into, um, so that we don't have that we're flying by the seat of our pants every moment. So that
Right.
really helped for me to look at them as small essays, and then later when bringing them together to kind of put in the grout in between the lines and smooth
Oh,
that
yeah.
over.
I
So that,
love that.
yeah, that may be helpful for you, and it really
Yeah.
dispenses with a lot of writer's block as well, because you're not worried about the entire train. You're just looking at one car at a time or one beat at a time.
See, that does help, and I think that'll help a lot of other people that are listening.
Mm-hmm.
If
Mm-hmm.
you've considered a memoir or a biography, or it don't even have to be an autobiography, just a biography. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it does help because you can't you can't obviously write down, from your birth all the way to now, because, well, there wouldn't be enough pages, right? So
Exactly.
so you've got to pick and choose, and I do love that is great advice, is doing it like essays. Do it like little essays, then come back. See, that would work for me, because then my
Mm-hmm.
brain would get, I could concentrate on one thing at a time, and then I could always go back, because you might want to do this lapse of 5 years here, and maybe a memory comes to you and you think, oh, I'm going to write this down, and that might be another time period, and that might be another, that way you don't have to stay linear while you're writing it, but then you bring it back, you know.
Exactly, exactly. And so much, I mean, this is kind of, it's said so often that it's almost trite, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Mhm,
So much of writing happens in revision. And the
mhm.
last thing that I think a writer should, I hate that word, but I'm going to say it anyway, should do to themselves is to get bogged down in this kind of, it's got to be perfect out the gate, because it's not going to. So if you let go of that and you just create these essays that are going to come together to create your memoir, if you let yourself make those, then you can do all of the other things that you want to do. When you see the shape of this animal, you can decide what it is, and then you can go in there and tweak and change, but you've got to get the thing out first. And I think that this method, at least for me and some other people that I've talked to, works really well. And I recommend giving it a try, at least, for
Right,
writers, and and even with people who are kind of writers who plot, right? Sometimes for those writers, it's really freeing to say, I'm not going to plan out this entire memoir or this entire novel or this entire chapbook. I'm simply going to create these little pieces that I know that I'm going to put in. And then later, when I'm in a different mindset, I will decide in what order and how I will transition between these things.
I like that a lot. Stephen, did you have a comment? I know Stephen is a plotter. He pants
I'm
some.
half. I'm
He's
half.
half and
Well,
half. Yeah,
I describe myself as half on that spectrum. I'm
yeah,
halfway pantser, halfway plotter, and
Mm,
but I write a lot of series, and so I have to have certain outline elements that coincide with the
mhm.
series in order to make
right.
sure you don't get off the rails as I go. But I also want to give myself room to develop something. But yeah, I mean, I love that approach very much, and that's something I actually, when I'm working as an editor or author coach, I've often said, just the main thing is, in revision, you got plenty of time to refine things and rework things in revision, but to get it down on the page, the ideas at first, and then
Mhm.
then you can refine and sort it out more later. But that's
Add
something
more. Yeah.
I've talked extensively, with some writers about, and it's it's important, not to think that you have to get a perfect first draft, because none of us do, none,
No.
at least
Right. But
yeah,
but we all suspect that everybody else is getting that, right? And
yeah.
Yeah.
and we're the only ones who are, just making
Well, see,
these mud pies, right?
Everybody else is
I
perfect right
used
out of the gate. Yeah.
I used to
Yeah.
think that, then I started doing a lot of editing work, and then that's reinforced the idea that no, it's I'm right.
Yeah. True, true.
Yeah,
Yes.
everybody's has the same kind of struggle, with that. So, but but yeah, I'm interested a lot in your structure too, because I really like the way that your structure is described for your other books, like I was Audio Love Monster, and also The Way Beauty Comes Apart. The describing them as novel and story, or
Hmm.
like link stories, story cycle
The
type
cycle.
construction.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get your insight on that structure, because a lot of people, are probably not familiar with that idea, and how your storytelling is formed there.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of, grows out of what I was just talking about a little bit too, the way that I'm even approaching a memoir, which will be one long, story, is
Hmm.
also to kind of capsulate it. But with the way beauty comes apart, which is the most recent story, it's a novel and stories. It's told by the dead. It's set in Wales, and each of the 14 chapters is told by a distinct character in the first person. And so they each tell their own story, and each of those stories has, a beginning, a middle, an end, a crisis. It has all of the parts of a story, but the stories intertwine with each other. So you will see characters appearing in each other's stories, but not just that. One character will have an insight that is then followed up by another character from a very different perspective. And so the reader will get new information as the story progresses, as we meet other characters and we see how they've dealt with, let's say, a tragic event that happened within the community that sends out ripples. And so that book is arranged very much in stories, but they very much make a novel. And
Mhm.
so is the first book. First book is set in Melrose Park, Illinois, but a fictitious Melrose Park, Illinois, based on family stories, but fictionalized. Um, it's got a third person narrator, but each of the stories has a different, we're following someone else's POV, right? And I find that doing this, well, first of all, for readers, it's really nice because they can read a chapter and that chapter stands as a story, right? So it's
Mhm.
nice to dip in and dip out of a book like that. I think the same thing holds true for the writer. When you're creating a book like that, it's also nice to dip in, write that story, perfect that story, write another story, perfect that story. Look at the way those stories inform one another, the way those characters would have dealt with one another and with their lives, and then, continue to mold them until, again, you get something that is a series of people's lives kind of impacting and bouncing off of one another. And that's what both of those books do. And in fact, I have never explained it to myself that way before. So, when you
Nice.
talk, right, when you talk about your work, you discover what you were up to.
Yes, that's
That's
true.
true. We
That's
always talk about how, on the show, when you're talking to other creatives, because it happens all the time, we'll be chit chatting and we all come up with these ideas. Be like, oh, that is cool. I'm going to try this or try that. Or, yeah, just
Hmm.
speaking with other like minded individuals, stirs these juices,
Absolutely. And one other thing I wanted to say, and this is, part of my process. Everybody has their own processes,
right?
but I am really a writer who listens for stories. I don't tend to be, or I don't feel like I'm devising them in my thinking brain. I feel like I kind of have feelers out, and I'm listening for the stories. I'm listening for the characters first. And then once I know who that person is, I kind of listen for them to tell me their story. And I know that sounds very sort of woo-woo writing, but that's what has worked for me. And that, I think, is what allows me to write the stories of people who are nothing like me. Um, and that was part of both of these books, I would say, as well, really strongly.
Well,
and,
and you draw. I seen you chatted about. You use like your culture, your past, like the way you used to spend your time on the 200 acres, and you
Mhm.
use that into your writing too. So could you discuss a little bit about your research and how you tie that in to your writing?
Well, okay, so in the memoir, The 200 Acres, most of that is just going to be my own memory, right? And also in
Right,
conversation with the other people who were there, service to the overall great truth, and also some poetic license, right? That's what's going to
right,
happen there.
right,
Um, Research wise, for the first book, which was the one set here in Illinois outside of Chicago, based on my mom's family, but fictionalized, I've been writing that book since I was 6, you know.
hmm
I was under the table listening into adult conversations. You'll find a lot of times, I think, and I think it's Mark Twain who said this, that the writer is not necessarily the most intelligent person in the room, but the most observant. And I think we observe, especially when we end up
Hmm.
writing later about, our families or inspired by our families. We've been watching that all of our lives. We've been telling those narratives to ourselves in our heads, all of our lives. And so the research there was more, again, memory, but sort of picking my mother's brain, but also as I wrote, I'm constructing a kitchen in the 1950s in this Chicago suburb, and I want to put in the linoleum. I'm a very visual writer, but I need to go and I need to actually research, what kind of linoleum would have been available, what were the colors, that would have been in that house. Not the ones that came out that year, but the ones that came out 5 years earlier, because these are not people who put in new linoleum on a whim. Uh, Double checking what was happening in the news. Uh, I was, learning Italian so that I could include the cadence of that language correctly in my work. So there's a ton of work, even ton of research, even with something that is memory based and observation based. Now, with the new book set in Wales, I had visited Wales several times. I was highly inspired. I had stories knocking on my door, knocking on my brain. But that one, because I was writing about a culture outside of my own, my research was 100-fold. I read Welsh short story writers. I read Welsh histories. I watched countless documentaries on Wales. I listened to speakers of the Welsh language, again, picking up, cadence and so on and so forth. And then beyond my own research, I had a Welsh reader to read for authenticity and language. And then I had a Welsh editor as well. And I really had hoped to publish that book in Wales more exclusively than in the US. It didn't pan out. So it was the US more so. But I really, because it was not my culture, I wanted to tread with ultimate respect there, and include the people that do live there in the writing of the book as much as I could, and did that. So I think each book and each project calls for a different type and a different amount of research.
Yeah, I love the fact you picked Wales because I was lucky enough to go over to the UK about 2010, about 3 years before
Mhm.
my mom passed, with my mom, my sister, and we went over Ireland and the UK and everything. And probably the highlight of my trip was Wales. I didn't know what to expect going in, because I knew a bit about Scotland and England and Ireland, but I didn't know a lot about Wales other than some medieval research I'd done for some of my books. So a little bit about the medieval period, but it was amazing. I mean, the place is magical, and yeah, I got to see some of the castles built by King Edward, and while we were there, like Caernarfon and so forth, I actually
Mhm.
walked around the base of it and held up the entire bus because I refused to leave that place before I did a full circuit to the base of that castle. So it was I got a little trouble for that, but but it was just amazing, the canals with the longboats, and they had and like I don't know, I can't remember the exact word from, but they had these real very specific kind of spoons that were
Hmm.
part of the fabric there, and just
Yeah.
this, you could just tell. I mean, everything was just so amazing, and so I mean, I'm really I do, and thank you, by the way, for sending me a copy of your book, because I'm going to be getting into it very shortly, to read your the way beauty comes apart. But one thing that intrigues me is that it's obviously not a magical realism book or a fantasy book, but you do bring that ancient vibe and the modern, and wield it together. From everything I've seen about the book, and I wanted you to talk a little bit about that. The old world, and the traditions, and the old world beliefs, but then also, bringing that into today, and how you kind of, work,
Yeah.
juxtapose, work all that together, because I think that's cool, especially for that particular place.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna second what you said about Wales too. I think as Americans, we don't, maybe know as much about that country as we do about Ireland or England or
Hmm.
Scotland, the other countries
Yeah.
in the region, right? When I arrived in Wales, I wanted to throw myself on the ground and never leave. That beauty of that place was just staggering. And so that's what I'm going to say about Wales. I don't want it to become overrun with us, but
Yeah.
what a gorgeous place. So as far as yeah, the old and the new, I think, well, I wrote a lot of stories. Only about a third of them are in this book. There are potentially two more volumes to come. Some that took place earlier, some that took place later. These are mainly in the Victorian era. So this is an era in which so the older religions of the land are still palpable, and I think they
Mhm.
still are to a degree. I don't think that
Yeah.
that
Oh, I do.
ended completely, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
There,
Nope.
if you part the veils, you'll see what's behind there.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Uh, but also there was, there were changes in mechanization and religion. There was a Welsh revival that was going on. There was just so much happening in that time. And I thought, well, how can we show this? And then I thought, oh, yeah, I'm writing these from 14 different narrators. So some of them are going to be moving more quickly into what they consider the modern era. There's a girl named Lily who wants to run off to London and become a fashion writer. She's very much in the modern mindset. There are a mother and granddaughter midwives who are watching the changes in midwifery, which at that time includes not just, childbirth, but also
Uh-huh.
people's deaths and a good
Right.
deal of, you know, uh, folk medicine. And they're cognizant of what's changing, but they don't know where it's going, and they're living within that. And so I bring in a lot of, in fact, the older one, the grandmother, shares with the reader in a direct approach, in the second person, like you readers, like, let me teach you something, let me show you something. I don't want this knowledge to be lost. So that's happening at the same time that we have other characters who are, concerned with farming or concerned with machinery or mining or, slate sets. So I think that it's all happening at once rather than there being an overall message. The overall message is that it's all happening at once, and each character is wrestling with the changes, but also each character is holding on to things that they've been taught, things that have been handed down through their families, and also this deep, deep connection to the land. And I think this connection to the wildlife, the landscape is also part of that magic, right? As much as the midwifery is. And as much as, the woman who's lost three of her children, uh, her idea about the fair folk or the fairies, or the
Hmm.
cunning folk being involved in that. It all works together. Now, how
Hmm.
did I do that? Or how does a writer do what ends up happening? I don't think most of us know. Um, I think it happens in revision, but I do think also that, a lot of it is sort of a gift. And I don't mean we have a gift, I mean we're given a gift, which is, that this is gonna roll out on the page. And then we kind of sit back sometimes and we go, oh my God, did I write that? Who wrote that? Uh, and I think, yeah, I think that if you put your mind as a writer into a space of change, and maybe all eras are spaces of change, but if we can see what those discrete little shifts are, and we read our histories and we use our imaginations and we sit back and we listen, I
Hmm.
think that we can inhabit that, and that our books can inhabit that.
Agree completely. Definitely, definitely. And I know that one of your characters is definitely going to be right up Holly's alley because you have a spell casting midwife. So,
Yes.
Yes. Who, I don't want to be a spoiler, but let me say, who's very wise and in some ways teaches this villainous other person kind of a good lesson, but not a
Yes.
lesson. I won't say more, but yeah, I,
Oh,
I
I
better
can't
zip
wait
it.
to delve into this one.
yep.
Ooh.
He'll be Holly be stealing my copy off my
Yep.
nightstand.
Yep.
I
Sure
should have
will.
sent two.
On this.
Because,
No,
well, yeah,
don't worry. I'll let
Steve,
her read it. I promise. I promise.
Steven knows that's my favorite time period, right? And the fact that if I wouldn't have got my body doesn't agree with my mind, I would have been a midwife by now. I'm a disabled retired nurse now because of the fibro and
Hmm.
neuropathy and all these things. So I cannot do it, but I would have went on to get my midwifery, and I was able to actually deliver. I used to live in an Amish community. All my neighbors were Amish. I was not, obviously, but I did deliver an Amish baby that lived next door. One of my neighbors, the midwife, didn't get there in time. They knew I knew how, and I'm all about holistic medicine and all this. So we got her done, and yes, and he's still living to tell the tale. But yes, I'm very very interested. So yeah, I will be
Yeah.
stealing his copy to read first.
You will love these two ladies, and they both have the same name because the granddaughter was named after the grandmother. So
Nice.
they really are a pair. And yeah, you're going to enjoy them a lot. I think
And
you'll enjoy the rest too, but you're going to really
oh
love
yeah,
them.
I will. And I love that you made the point that midwives were healers also.
Hmm.
They're the ones that actually during the witch craze, the witch trials, burn the witch, burn they're actually the ones that got burnt for being witches. And so that left whole communities without healers, without
Hmm.
someone to deliver the base. I mean, they shot themselves in the foot along with murdering innocent women. So, yeah, it was kind of a karma backlash on them too. So, which was beautiful to see played out. But yeah,
Yes, and
um,
they had to be secretive a lot of the time
yeah,
because of the
yeah,
danger.
the
And
fear.
yeah, yeah, yes. So here's a little bit of personal information. My great grandmother on my mother's side and my great grandfather on my father's side, both of those people were from Sicily, and they were both village healers. The woman
Nice.
was a midwife as well, and the man did, fertility curing, all sorts
Right.
of things. And my grandmother would tell a story about showing up to date my grandfather and his father, the healer. There would be a line of women on Taylor Street in Chicago lined up around the corner waiting to get in to see him, because those people who had immigrated from Sicily brought their trust of this type of a healer. It's called Stradigaria there,
Uh-huh.
and they didn't go to the doctors. They preferred to go to him. And this would have
Right.
been about, I don't know, not 19 1930, 1935. So that was still going strong within the immigrant community here of Italians and probably of other groups as well. I just didn't, have the personal insight into that. But it was it was quite a lot of knowledge.
Right. That's passed down. It's generational. Passed down
Hmm.
to generation, and I know some people have kept it up, but it's a dying art, and it's
Hmm.
sad
Hmm.
because it did work, and maybe science couldn't say why it all worked, but it did work. The
Hmm.
proof was in the pudding, and we know that the healing of nature is always better than the healing of man because it's from nature and it's not a chemical substance. So,
I think
I do love it.
Well, I think there's been a little bit of a resurgence in
I
Yeah.
interest
think so.
in all of this because people are just so disgusted with just the
Big pharma.
the big pharma, big corporate machine,
Yeah.
with healthcare and stuff, and people are looking, for answers. I think in
Alternatives. Yeah.
alternative
Yeah,
medicine, holistic medicine, and all kinds of practices like that. So I
I
think
think
it's
I
yeah.
think they are. Yeah, I think they are, and I think part of and I think that people are going to decide based on what it is that's going on with them, kind of
Right.
maybe which
Hmm.
direction they're going to go. But I think one of the things that really worked in the case of village healers, midwives, so all of that was that those people knew you. They knew you from the time you were born until the time you died. And there's a power in community as well. When someone
Hmm.
in your own community, maybe the woman who delivered you as an infant comes to attend to your bronchitis or comes to, you know, there's a there's a connection there already, and I think that that is part of the healing too, is that it's a community, and that community really cares for and knows itself, right? And you can feel when someone walks in the room that loves you, you feel it, right?
Hmm.
um,
Right.
and your doctor, and I have a wonderful GP. He likes me a lot, but he's probably got thousands and thousands of patients, and he can't bring me that. And
Hmm.
I think that those healers were able to bring that as well.
Yep,
Yeah. Agreed.
and there's been more scientific research done that shows that there is something to energies and
Hmm.
all kinds of stuff that's involved with holistic medicine that does there is science behind it now. And
Hmm.
I've seen a lot of wild research on that. But I do want to get into a little bit about because you touched a little bit about the how you can take yourself and immerse into any era and use your imagination with knowledge of the
Hmm.
culture and the history, and you can get into that zone. But and I can relate in I can hear some things in common with you. But because you talk about doing initial drafts from what you describe as a trance-like state, and so this is
Yeah.
getting close to something I
Yeah.
can probably relate to. But I want to also mention before you get into it that you mentioned also that you think it's connected to an early interest in spiritualism and mediumship, and
Uh-huh.
which is a gift from your grandmother. And I think this is going to be an interesting thing because I want to hear you talk about that
Okay.
trance-like state with writing, and then also that because this is definitely
Yes.
Holly's topic. She
That's
loves
my
Okay.
wheelhouse. Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
do you want me to start with trans-like state, or do you want me to start
Yes.
sure.
with the spiritualist camp?
We could start. Well,
The
go
translate. Yeah.
wherever you
Your
want to
writing
go for it. Mhm.
process. That's
Yeah,
Yes.
that is
yeah,
fascinating.
So you
yeah.
might think that it's very fancy and very prescribed, and that I, light candles and turn on specific music and, put my fuzziest slippers on and do all of that, but that's actually not the case. Um, when I sit down to write, I remove all the expectations about what I'm going to do, right? So I
Hmm.
just kind of, relax and open my mind to what's going to come to me. Now I can do this writing by hand. I can do it, using my computer if I want to. Generally like to do it writing by hand. Um, but I allow myself, do you remember that feeling you had when you were daydreaming when you were in fourth grade and you were seated next to the window in the classroom and you could just stare out and not be in
Mhm.
the classroom anymore?
Mhm.
That's
Oh.
where I go. Um, and it's what I would say is if someone had, you know, electromagnetic sensors on my head, that I am in a different brainwave when I do that. And I'm not really thinking about what's coming down, but I'm really listening for whatever is coming to me. And it's not automatic writing. Automatic writing is something else completely. But I would say that it's inspired writing. And I just let it flow, just let it keep going. Now, the reason that I don't have to do a lot of preparation for that is because that's how I've been writing for a really long time, right? So like I
Mhm.
can duck into that pretty quickly. If a person were going to begin to write like that, if a person wanted to get out of their thinking head and start writing in this kind of more intuitive way, I would I could you know suggest to them, I could workshop with them about, how do you get yourself there? I think when you're beginning, it is a case of make sure you're comfortable. Do some breathing techniques. Let go of your ego. Let go of yourself. Listen. Sometimes when I'm doing workshops, I'll do a listing technique where people will list what they know, and then I'll have them move into what they don't know. Uh, I think that, every person will find in the end their own way to do that. But if you allow yourself to have the experience rather than to control the experience
Mhm.
of the imagination, you will get writing that you could not have forced yourself to do because you didn't know it was out there.
Mhm.
And I'm generally doing kind of what I would call a character sketch or a vignette. That's how it's going to start. I'm going to get um, kind of auditory or visual input. I'm going to describe a room. I'm going to describe the person who's in there. There's going to be some type of a mood or a request and ask for help. What is that person going through? This stuff is going to kind of appear for me and then translate onto the page. And I might do like, so when I was writing The Way Beauty Comes Apart, and I have 14 here, but there are probably 50 stories. I would sit for a night and I would just listen for that one character. That's all. And when that one character was finished, then I was finished and I would close everything up. And the next night I would listen for the next character. And when I
Mhm.
say a trance-like state, it's not that someone couldn't get my attention if they needed to, but it would take them, 5 times of saying my name to get me back out
Mhm.
of where I was, because I'm not in that forcing thinking brain.
Mhm. I know
Does
exactly. Yes, I can relate. Yeah, because I always tell Holly when I'm kind of in my what I call my zone, and I've even used the word trance as well.
Mhm.
I feel
Yeah.
like when she has to get my attention, because it's very rare, but when she has to get my attention for something going on, it's emergency or something like that. I feel jarred when she gets me
Yeah.
out of that state, and yeah, so I can
So
relate.
I do not
It's similar.
pester
Yeah.
him when he's doing that unless it is an emergency.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but yes,
Yes.
but I just say that just to say, yes, I can relate to what you mean. Yeah, it's like you're
Mhm.
really it's a depth. There's a depth to it that you
Mhm.
really you're yeah in that zone.
Yeah,
So
Yeah, and I
yeah.
think
it's a deep focus. You have to be deep. It's a deep focus, you know.
it is. It's a deep focus. Some people will say flow, but I think this has the added edge of I'm not I'm letting it come through me rather than creating it in a
Mhm.
certain way.
Right.
I
Um,
get it. I get it.
And I think that, yeah, that is part of it for me. But it
Hmm.
might be different. It might be different from other. And the other thing is, and you will recognize this when you stop and you put away the work and you get up to go live the rest of your life. It takes you about an hour to truly resurface.
Yeah.
Yes, and
Yeah.
Holly always, she always kids me, when I come out after riding because I'm always in that kind of
The
haze.
zone.
Right.
Whatever. It takes me a while to get
Yeah,
fully
because
back
usually
again.
I have 1,000 things to tell him about,
Hmm.
imaginary him or things I've done and questions I have,
Yeah,
and
no,
he'll say, "I'm not enough. You'll have to wait a minute." He
Yeah.
can't think. So, because
yeah,
I'm always
yeah.
like, "Well, this and this and this happened, and this," and he says, "You cannot bombard me right now."
So
That's
basically, it's
exactly.
nice to finally meet somebody that understands
Yeah.
what I'm going through.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place to be. It's hard to
Yeah,
leave. Um,
it
it's like
is.
decompression, right? It's like they're pulling you
Yes,
up from the bottom of the sea and they've got to keep you in that little thing for a
it's
while
so
so you
true.
don't explode when
Yep.
people
Yeah,
start
and
talking to
he,
you.
and he's detail or he's one-minded, right? He's on,
Yeah.
and not me. I've got 30 tabs open. I'm thinking about this, and doing this, and he's always like, "You have got to quit bombarding me."
It's painful. It's painful. I
Oh,
hear you.
It is.
And, and
But
then with the spiritualist camp,
yes.
that's an interesting thing. So my grandmother went to a spiritualist camp in the driftless zone of Wisconsin. And that camp has been there since 1879.
wow,
Since 1879, and still in operation.
wow,
And so it started during the spiritualist movement, during the Victorian age. And there would be a train that would pull up in this small town in Wisconsin, and the people would get off the train and they would climb probably about 200 steps up the side of that had been carved into the side of a bluff to get to this camp that was at the top of the hill. And there was a ticket booth and they would pay to come in, and there were tents and there were mediums, and this was in the Victorian age. My grandma's not that old. It was still going on in the 1970s when we were up in Wisconsin doing our thing with Yule Gibbons. And I had been reading a lot of my grandma's books. So we would go into town and my grandma would give us ice cold Coca-Cola and turn on the air conditioning. We get to stay there for an hour or so before we had to go back up to the land again. And I had read Edgar Casey. I had been reading the Bridie Murphy story, which is about the reincarnation of an Irish girl who's telling the tale of a life that she lived previous through past life regression
nice.
therapy. I was reading Chariots of the Gods. I was reading everything that was in her bookshelf, and when I turned 12, she asked my parents, "Well, is it all right if I take her up to the hill?" And my parents were like, "Yeah, that's fine." And so she brought me and my friend who had been visiting with us, and I had no idea I had no preparation other than all the books
Right.
I'd read, but I didn't know where we were going. And they had a lot of people playing guitars, and you would put your message in the chapel into a big basket, and someone would pull out your message and answer your question, right? And I can still remember I had 14 years old. A boy, was I a thinker. I think I put in, "Who will my boyfriend be?"
Well, of course,
Something,
that's
right?
the age, right? Yeah.
Right, right. You've got to triage by importance. And the woman said to me, "Oh, you're going to really love a man who plays the guitar." And I thought, "Oh
Ah,
gosh, like
okay.
Robert, or is it Robert Plant?" So apparently not. But I was really, it was a beautiful place. Just kind people and interest in things that were in the mysterious, in the unknown, in the esoteric, in the uh, philosophical, right? I didn't know how to think about it in those ways yet, but I really knew that I felt great there and I really liked these people. So, um, my grandmother continued, to go there, I believe. She wasn't incredibly, she was never trying to tell us what to think or how to think. But I, kind of in my adulthood got very busy, had children, had all sorts of things going on. But during a sort of hiatus in life, which you sometimes get in a hard time, I found that I had driven back up there. And in, I say, my 30s. And I went up to that hill and I checked in and I sat down with people and I sat around the fire and I had a reading. And, I kept going and kept going and kept going and ended up teaching classes and doing some other types of work up there. So that came way back into my life. And I think that it has informed, well, I think that everything that we are and everything that we do informs everything else that we are and everything else that we do. And I couldn't and wouldn't write the way I write without all of the other experiences I've had in my life. But I think that that is a strong experience for me.
Wow, life changing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And you say this place still exists?
It still exists. It still exists. And if you
Stephen,
Google
road trip.
That's funny. I knew
and
it.
and and you can even rent a cabin and stay there. So it's
Stephen, road trip.
Yeah. I knew it.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Agreed.
we need to go because and I will share um past life regression is a scary thing, and you do not want to go to a practitioner that is just willy-nilly and dabbling and don't know what
Yeah.
they're doing. And so I have never been comfortable with someone helping me go through this. However, I do know I have been here several times, the last being the Victorian era. I know
Mhm.
I've been here during that time for facts. And I would love to do some past life regression. And I've always talked to spirits, and I've been able to. I've even been falling asleep, and Stephen's grandmother came to me, and I never met her. I didn't know that much about her. And she came to me one night, showed me a bunch of things, and so I woke Stephen, and I said, Stephen, I got to tell you this. And as I was telling him, he was just like in shock, because he's like, well, there's no way you could have known that. No, no, there isn't no way I knew that. But yeah, I said, this is the message she's wanting me to deliver. And yeah, so it is a gift, and I am thankful for my gift. I do not abuse my gift.
Mhm.
I don't go around, demanding cash for it, or, you know,
Right.
things like this. I do not abuse it. If people come through and want to show me something, to tell me something to somebody, I will do it. I will tell them. I've woke
Mhm.
my mother up in the middle of the night. I've had to call her because my grandfather was coming through wanting me to tell her something, and she's like, well, you couldn't have known that. No, I know this. I'm telling you, he told me this.
Right. I'm just the conduit here.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm not the instigator. Yeah.
No. And no, there's no way I could have known this. So, yeah, obviously it's them. But yeah, that's what's fascinating. And it is very inspiring. Uh, Creatively, it's inspiring. So
Mhm.
a camp like that, being able to be with like-minded individuals and open-minded individuals would like just break open a bunch of creative juices and let it flow.
Mhm.
And just being in that environment would help, even like Stephen in that trance, like what you talk about. He
Yeah.
always talks about how he's in a bubble because he blares music. And I can't, that's not my thing. I have to have my, Mozart or Beethoven, or I don't
Yeah.
like voices. I have to have, he calls it my jellyfish or whatever music, but I like my folk music or my Celtic. you
Yeah.
know,
No, I call it Sea Ray
ambiance.
music. It's the music
Sea
you
Ray.
hear when you go to the aquarium
Yeah.
and you go to the Sea Ray exhibit. The music they play there. That's what I'm talking about.
Yes. I love my Viking music and my Celtic, yeah,
Mhm.
flutes and all that. So yeah, I find that fascinating that you actually take that and make it an integral part of your writing journey.
Mhm. Mhm.
I
Yes.
think that's
And
it's
and
really cool.
I've taught a couple classes up there on writing the ancestors, and that is a great place to be teaching that class. And I think that a lot of the people who are there are very open to and want to acknowledge their ancestors and to kind of listen for them and to recognize their lives and their love and their messages and those types of things. It's just a wonderful place, and for writers, the idea of being able to be in a cabin with no distractions,
Yeah,
uh, and be able to focus, and the energy is good. It's just, yeah, just a really excellent space for that, because we write in our own homes because that's practical, and I do
right.
it all the time. But there's a dog trying to get me to feed it early, and I know that the dryer is going to go off pretty soon. We have all of those things that are kind of
Yes,
pressing. And also, like, you find that when you're away and you've packed up your imagination and taken that with you, that's really the only thing you need is
that's
you,
true.
is you to do the
Yes,
writing.
that's it. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Stephen,
definitely.
that's it. See, Stephen, see, we need to take a trip.
Yes, I can hear you already. I know. Road
There
Well,
trip, a road trip.
swing by and pick me up on your way. I think
Yeah,
I'm in the direct line.
you got
you
it.
go.
That's
We'll have a
awesome.
creative weekend.
We will.
Mhm.
We will. And but I do want to get a little bit into as we get near to the end of the show. I do want to give you a chance to talk about the press you work with, and
Mhm.
because we love hearing about different publishers, and both of your books are small press, correct?
Mhm. Yes, and
And
they're the
yeah,
same small press. Mhm.
yes, and I wanted to give you a chance to talk about your publishers and give any insights you want to on you know the life of the independent author as far as
Yes.
the challenges of
Yeah.
marketing and all that good stuff. That's a topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
I
cover a
mean,
lot on the show. Yeah, we love
yeah,
it.
let me start by saying I have a really good publicist and promoter, Dan Clefstad. So
Yes.
Yes,
that has made my life
a
a
legend.
lot easier, than it would be otherwise. But small presses, yeah. I think that when we write, we're all hoping, that we're going to get picked up by one of the big five, or is it four now? And, skate our way to riches and fame. And, find an agent perhaps beforehand that's going to do all of that work for us. But I think it's such a changing industry, and there's so much going on with small presses and even with people who are self-publishing as well. Um, that that the big is not for everybody. So I have a small press. I don't have the small press. I have a small press that published my book, that I had submitted to them when their journal several times and been published there. And the owner of the small press said to me, Ovunque Siamo is what it's called, and it's an Italian American press that furthers the
Nice.
work of Italian American writers. It's new Italian American
Nice.
writing. And
Huh.
Yeah.
so, right, so it's kind of niche. And then Michelle Reale, who runs that, said to me, "Hey, you know what? I love your work. I really love your work. Once in a while, we publish a book. What are you working on?" So I was working on the Italian American book, and so of course she was like, "Oh, we'd love to publish that." Um, she said, "But we're really tiny. We're really tiny, and like we're not gonna." We don't have a big marketing plan. We're going to do POD, you know, it's going to, and I was like, who cares? Somebody said they want to publish my book, right?
That's,
like,
yeah.
like
Woo,
publish
let's
my
go.
book.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not getting younger. Um, so, you know, I learned all of those things with them. It was a great experience. They're, you know, she's a wonderful person. I had complete control over things. So, you know, I would pay for my own editor and I would design my own cover or have someone design it for me. The press would not charge me anything, nor would they take any of my proceeds. So, you know, it worked out well for me. I think, you know, I think you have to be wary of any press that you're paying anything to. So I'm just going to say that.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
You
absolutely.
know,
Yes.
so don't do that. So no, none of that. And the book did well, and you know, and the book won an award, and it was my first book, so that was great. And then a little while later, she was like, "Well, what else are you working?" I said, "I'm working on this book about whales, but you're not going to be interested in it because you know it's not Italian American." She said, "Well, are you an Italian American author?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Do you think you have to be in a pigeonhole?" I said, "No." She said, "Okay." So not only did they publish a second book, but they also brought me on to the journal, and I'm an editor for their journal now, which is really cool. So I'm their prose editor for the Overvoice
Nice.
Handsome Journal. Yeah,
Nice. That's cool.
which is really nice. And you know, now Michelle says, would you like to help to publish someone else's book? We have another Italian American author whose book really needs to be published. So now I'm moving into working with other writers and bringing their books to fruition in this
Oh,
same
that's
way.
awesome.
Yeah, so again, we
Yeah.
go back to community, right?
Hmm.
So I would say this is a very community-based small press. Now, the thing I think for people who will listen to this, and I think this is the case for larger presses as well nowadays, you're going to do a lot of your own marketing.
Yep.
You are going to do a lot of your own promoting. And it's not cut and dried as to what's going to work and what's not going to work. And you're going to have to try a lot of things out and really think really hard. And I think for a lot of writers, and for me in particular, as one of these types of writers, I want to write. I don't want to do this
Hmm.
other stuff. I'm not interested in it. In fact, I may hate it. Uh, but I have to do it. Have to do it
Hmm.
because it's part of the deal.
Hmm.
And so, you know, if you have a good publicist, a good promoter, that can be incredibly helpful to you. Even with that, you have to be thinking about how do I get this book into people's hands, because that's why you know you wrote it to express yourself and to have the experience and to make a beautiful piece of art. But if that it's the you know tree falling in the woods, if that art does not you know that book isn't read by people,
Hmm.
then it has not, you know, it's like a symphony that never gets played. You've got to get that to happen. And that I have the hard way I think learned is a process, and you have to trust it and you have to plug away every day instead of
Hmm.
having these big flourishes, right? Every day
Right.
you have to think about what can I do to promote this book
Hmm.
and even to promote my work in its entirety, right? Because when I talk
Hmm.
to you about memoir and the first book and the second book, you know, they're very different from each other. But any of my things that you read, you will know that I wrote them before you see my
Hmm.
name on them, because we have a
Hmm.
writer's voice. We
Hmm.
have a way of doing things, a way of working, looking at the world, and that I think is the thing that you're promoting as well. You're promoting
Absolutely.
that artistic sensibility. And nobody else has the same one that you have. There's no replacement for you.
Oh, I agree 100%, and yes, and it is true that in most major press authors, the burden of marketing and publicity falls on their shoulders. There's very few authors that really don't have to worry about that, and that's that's when you
Right.
get up to the the Stephen
Yeah,
King and J.K. Rowling level, and that's
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but yes,
Exactly.
most major press authors I know, they have to carry the weight too, and
Mhm.
yeah, it's something that definitely is a challenge in today's market, just because there's simply just such a high volume of titles that are coming out, with the ever since the ebook explosion and self publishing, gained
Mhm.
finally gained credibility and everything. It's there's just such a high volume of things, and that and then too now, unfortunately, we're getting some of
Mm.
the AI
AI.
generated
Mm.
stuff, and that's a whole
Right.
nother. We could do a whole episode about that.
Right. So
But,
there's a
yeah,
there's a glut on the market, right?
yeah,
And how do
yeah.
you
Yep.
how does a reader like I mean, I'm thinking about
Mhm,
myself as a writer tonight, but as a reader too, like how do I differentiate?
mhm,
Um, because nobody wants to like all right, nobody wants to read something that they don't think is good, right?
mhm,
Mhm.
So, how do I find my books in this world, which is a very different reader's world than it was 10 years ago.
Oh yeah.
And
mhm,
I think, a writer has to think about those readers from the reader's mindset as well. Like, how are they going to find me? Where will they look for me? Uh,
mhm.
and I don't have
That's
the
true.
answers, you guys. I don't have I don't have the answers, but I'm getting closer to them. I think we're getting closer to those answers, and it's changing under our feet. I
Mhm,
teach AI is in the classroom composing
mhm.
really, really bad stories uh,
Yep.
that are getting handed in as original work. And I think the misuse of it is very troubling.
Mhm.
And I think writers, can sometimes we can feel a little bit dismayed or even forlorn. I love that word. Because we've dedicated our time and our energy and our lives to this craft.
Yes.
And in 10,000 hours, Malcolm Gladwell's, hours and hours and hours to being able to do this. Not that we're perfect, we'll continue to grow, but it's like the playing field is shifting under our feet, and what used to be meaningful is being portrayed as meaningless. And I think we just have to hold to the truth, which is that when we read a book, we're communicating with the writer. When we
Mm,
write a book, we're communicating with the reader. This is human beings communicating with each other about how do you make sense of this life? How do
mhm,
you make sense of this universe, of this world? How do we understand it? It doesn't matter whether it is, graphic novel, poetry,
mhm.
fantasy. That it's all about like walking each other home, like Ram Dass says, right? That's what this whole thing is. And uh, I don't know that we want to be walked home by an AI bot kind of writing things. So, you
Nope.
know, that's that's where I stand on it. Others
No.
have different thoughts, but that's where I stand.
Nope. There are certain uses for research and all
Hmm.
that where
Yep.
AI can
Yeah.
exceed what Google can do, and we've talked about this in the show before, but for creative generation and generative side of things, I mean it's got to come from be authentic from a person, completely, and I think that it's going to go through a phase where you just see this flood of artificially made music, artificially, some artificial writing stuff.
Hmm.
But then I think there's going to be a boomerang back to hunger for genuine article, and
Right.
I think that's gonna be what happens. and
Yeah.
but right now, yeah, we're having to endure this phase of it where it's kind of like the new shiny thing, and
Right.
it's causing
Yeah.
We're
mess.
using it for
But
everything,
yeah, but
right?
for young writers, the part that bothers me, though, and I know that you can, have experienced this as a professor, but it's just that your skill sets don't advance when you turn to AI to do your work for you. Your skill sets get blunted, and you don't grow in the craft, and you don't develop as a writer if you're using AI as your crutch, for for everything. So that's the only thing that kind of bothers me is for younger writers and all that are
Yeah.
get swayed by it a little bit
Well,
because they're
you
not
learn,
learning to be writers.
right, and you learn so much about who you are and what you
Hmm.
think by writing. Like when you set down your thoughts in writing, you see what they are. Uh, and I think if it's not you who's setting those thoughts down, then you're not learning who you are. Um,
Exactly. Hmm.
and so, you know, that is the writing suffers, but also I think the humane development of the human being suffers as well, or
Hmm.
just you know, doesn't get the chance to do that kind of development.
Agreed. Agreed. 100%. And, but I do want to give one shout out because you did mention, of course, that you did get that award. And we mentioned at the
Mhm.
beginning of the show with Best New Independent Press Fiction Award
Mhm.
on Audio Love Monster. But I do want to give a shout out that is from the Chicago Writers Association. I love them. And I am a member.
Yes.
I am a member of the CWA myself. And
High
so, yeah,
five.
definitely want to give them a shout out and for sure on that
Yeah.
because they're a great
They're
bunch.
excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent.
it was my first year being a member, but yeah, I definitely look
Yep.
forward to getting out there and participating in some of the live stuff out there. As soon as I can. so, but um, but yes, but as we kind of get to wrap things up, is there anything that we did not cover in our discussion
Hmm.
tonight that you were eager to spotlight that we may have missed? I want to make sure we give you a chance to cover everything.
Um, you know, one thing that was just crossing my mind was audiobook. And I think what I want to say, especially if there are people who are listening who are writing and who are going with independent presses, and you know, they're just not going to have a huge budget. I was able to record the audiobook for my first book, Addio Love Monster, at my local library. The Elgin Public Library
Oh wow.
has a sound booth, a dedicated sound
Yeah.
booth, and a sound engineer. And we worked together for, I want to say like 6 weeks, and we recorded the book, and they helped me to load it and everything. So I think that that is available not at every local library, but it is something that is available at many libraries, and people don't really know that it's there. So I
Yeah,
want writers.
There are so many things available now at your
we're
local
seeing
libraries
we're seeing it in
that many
Lexington
people
all,
don't know.
all over the place.
Hmm.
Several of the places in Lexington
So
have
that's cool. I did not know
facilities.
you
Yeah.
could do audiobooks, but they have podcast rooms and everything else, so that would make sense.
Hmm.
They edited it, and I could not have done that on my own, so it wouldn't have
Wow.
happened.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
yeah. Now the
Yeah.
next one I won't do because I can't do it with a Welsh accent, and it really shouldn't be in an American accent. But then the book I do following this one, I'll probably trot right back in there and do that because I think there is a readership. I mean, I guess we would call it readership, a listenership of
Yeah.
audiobooks, and
Yeah.
Yes.
I think
There
that
is.
is something that writers need to be thinking about.
Well,
Uh,
there's those that are losing their eyesight
mhm.
that rely on audiobooks to
Mhm.
be able to enjoy titles.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Or those who are just walking their dog. You know, like
Yeah,
me today, listening to
jogging. Yeah,
Elizabeth Gilbert's book, and I was, you know,
yeah.
doing double duty.
Oh, was it Eat, Pray, Love?
No, no, it's the new one. I think it's
Oh, I haven't read the new
oh,
one.
Down to the River.
Ooh,
Uh, oh yeah, it's really good. It's right up your alley. You'll love it.
also I'll have to look
Awesome.
this.
Yeah.
Oh, I loved Eat, Pray, Love.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll like this a lot. It's a little, I don't know, like it's a little more gritty.
Ooh, I like grit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's great. It's sand in your swimsuit gritty, so you're gonna
nice.
Nice.
like
Nice.
I
it.
like that. I
Yeah,
like that phrase.
that's good. I like that. I might have to borrow that phrase. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like
no
that
kidding. I like that.
Well,
one.
you
That's a
guys,
good one.
it's this has
Yep.
been really great. I'm so glad that you invited me to do this.
Well,
No, it's
don't
been
be a
fantastic.
stranger.
And don't be a stranger because yeah, we know I know we get the chance absolutely. But if we don't come out to Chicago for an event before Imaginarium and get to meet you beforehand,
Hmm.
we'll see you at Imaginarium. But yeah, definitely keep us in the loop on everything you have going on because
I
yeah, it
will.
sounds wonderful. All the work you're doing with your writing and definitely hope your the academia goes well too. So I know
Yes.
my dad was a professor, so I definitely understand.
Right. If I'm not
Yeah.
grading, I'm reading. If I'm not reading,
Mhm.
I'm writing, and then I'm grading
Yes.
again.
Yep.
The
Hey,
vicious cycle continues.
it's a great life. I can't complain.
Yep.
So,
But yeah, thank you
and
for
yeah,
yeah,
do
thank you.
drop me an email if you want the secret Wisconsin address.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes, we will.
100%.
But
Okay.
but I'll let Holly wrap up the show here with you. But thank you so much, Christina, and it's been a great show tonight. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you. I did too.
Yes. Thank you for joining us
Yes.
and
Uh-oh, I think Holly dropped.
I'm
I
still
think.
here. I don't know.
Oh
I'm
yes,
here.
yeah. I
I'll
know.
be
I
here
do,
all
yeah.
night.
No, I heard Holly drop, so I may have to close out the show tonight.
Okay.
Her connection just dropped out. She usually closes the show out, so I'm gonna have to do my
I don't know
best
what
to
happened,
wind this
She's
one up.
but
back.
I'm
She's
There she
back.
is. There. Okay.
I am
I was about
back.
to have to take your spot, Holly.
I know. I always finish out the show and I was like, what happened? I was closing windows and I think I accidentally closed the wrong one.
That was it.
But I am back. But thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, don't be a stranger and we will be in touch. And yeah, I look forward to being able to chat face to face.
Okay, I do too. And again, thank you guys. Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you. You
Okay,
were a great
have a
guest.
great night, everybody.
You too. You too. Good night. All right, listeners. Join us next Wednesday, same place, same time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard. Another great guest, another great chat. For the rest of the week, be creative. Good night, all.